Hold on, that's not a PS2 game. For those who didn't know, my favourite console is the PS2. As a matter of fact, at the time this video goes out, the PS2's European launch would have happened exactly 20 years ago. So I thought, hey, why not make a video about my experiences with it? Before we do that, we need to know why the PS2 was so successful in the first place. To understand that, we must first go back to the PS1. The console was the most successful of the 5th generation, with CDs offering more storage, a new controller, and some of the very best games the market offered. The fanbase grew and grew, and you couldn't go 10 feet without someone yelling, PlayStation. This meant that Sony was now on top of the video game industry, leaving Nintendo in a very distant second, and Sega in the runners-up of Sega's top 32 disappointments. Sony also had the most third-party support, including Square, once a Nintendo exclusive. They shifted development of Final Fantasy VII onto the PS1, which helped massively to the PS1's success. Many people were buying the system just to play it. Then comes Sony fans were eager to see what their next console would be. The console's reveal brought along with it some revolutionary advancements, like front-loading, blue discs, not to mention effect. But what about the games? Well, some early PS2 games were actually quite good, but some not so much. But it wasn't long before a whole bunch of new games, better games, came flooding in. For example, Final Fantasy X. Many people call it a masterpiece, and they're right, but I haven't played it, but my sister has on stream, so if you want to see that, there's a link in the description. A new RPG for a new console, Final Fantasy X features Tidus touring the land of Spira to eventually fight Sin, who is his father. A gripping story, amazing music and memorable characters turn this game into a PS2 necessity. Ratchet & Clank, the first in the Insomniac Games franchise, sees you control Ratchet, a member of the Lombax species, across various planets with his companion Clank, as they solve puzzles and defeat enemies to stop the evil Chairman Drek. With an amazing soundtrack and innovative mechanics, this game had to become a PS2 staple. Not to mention Metal Gear Solid 2, Dynasty Warriors, Dark Chronicle, Crash Bandicoot, Drakengard 2, Prince of Persia, The Sims, Splinter Cell, Resident Evil 4, Final Fantasy 12, Rayman, Spider-Man, and Max Payne. That sure was a large amount of games. There really was something for everyone on the PS2. But what were the games I was into? My parents wouldn't let me play Max Payne or Resident Evil 4 because of the big scary number on the box. Well, look at me now, Mum. Dooby-dooby-doo, where are you? I used to play this game all the time, and I remember it being very challenging yet entertaining. It wasn't like I was the biggest fan of Scooby-Doo, more like I admired how the game worked, exploring large worlds, defeating ghosts with a magic book, solving clues and eventually the whole mystery. The graphics are an accurate recreation of the show the game is based off. The music, the controls all got me hooked. This is a game I say is worth adding to your PS2 library, especially if you're a fan of the good old Scooby-Doo. Another game I poured many hours into. So many hours in fact, I actually 100%ed it. You can play as Elastigirl, Mr. Incredible, Dash and Violet as you play throughout the movie storyline. As Elastigirl you swing on level terrain and throw enemies across the stage. As Mr. Incredible you punch through enemies too. As Dash you are running down a winding course avoiding cars and roadworks. And if you've ever wanted to ram a child face first into the backs of vehicles, you can do a lot worse than the Dash stages in the Incredibles game. And as Violet you can play Operation Stealth as you use your invisibility powers to sneak past the guards. They all control well, there isn't much delay, but there's something much worse. The camera. Sometimes it just doesn't let you see where you're aiming, so you wind up randomly pressing the attack button only to find out that there was an enemy you couldn't see. The graphics are nice, but there's a noticeable downgrade compared to the movie. Hey losers, Cheaters McGee here. And you suck at games so hard you just feel like cheating, especially if that game is incredible on the PS2, because that's where I come in. Super strength? You got it. Making the game easier? No problem. And hey, if you're not for straight up cheating, you can also mess around with the graphics. Like the small heads turn the saturation up to 101%. And hey, for a speedrunner, I highly recommend using this code, and if you do, the gameplay will be sped up by 25%. So what are you waiting for? Call this number on screen, buy yourself a Cheaters McGee handbook, where I not only teach you how to cheat on games, but your tests and relationships too. By now I'm sure you've come to realise that I've poured many hours into this game too. I've even 100%ed it. This game features Rayman locked in a prison cell, and his only way of escape is to collect plungers he gets from minigames. The 16 minigames are divided into 15 days, with the more difficult games placed further down the list. The games range from getting to the end of a course in time to rhythm minigames, where you dance to copyrighted songs so I can't play them. However, the games I couldn't get enough of were the shootouts. Picture this. Your friend has been taken hostage and it's up to you to get them back. You're equipped with a gun that shoots plungers and a chain grabber, and the enemies in your way are mad rabbids. Yeah, I couldn't get enough of that. But it isn't just rabbids, there are rabid robots too. Taking on 3 at one time takes a massive toll on your health. Fortunately, 9 hit points should be enough to get you through the stage. If this wasn't in your PS2 library, then I don't know what to tell you, other than you are missing out big time. This game is one of the best games of the 6th generation, with loads of missions, huge worlds to explore, and an engaging storyline too. Like in The Incredibles, you are able to play as the whole Simpsons family, but how does one traverse such wide worlds? Well, there is a vast variety of vehicles at your disposal, from the trademark pink sedan to something like a hovercraft. One of the game's core mechanics is the hit and run meter. If you drive too recklessly or attack enough people, the police will start chasing you. If they catch you, it's a 50 coin fine, but if you can get them off your trail, then you can carry on like normal. I plan to make a full video on this game someday, so I'll just leave it here for now. I've only noticed a couple weeks ago that the logo is in holographic print. Like, I've had this game for about 9 years, and only now I see that. Anyway, you can choose to play as 4 teams of 3, and your goal is to reach the end of each stage to eventually fight Dr. Eggman by using a combination of each team's members' unique abilities. Each stage is filled with enemies, loops and great music. However, you must know that this game was also ported onto the GameCube and the original Xbox, and guess which version is considered the worst? If you said the PS2 version, you're absolutely right. Combine that with how scratched my copy is after manhandling it for about 9 years or so, I think it's fair to expect this game to run, well, let's just say, as intended. So you could say they were the games I played the most when I was younger, but just because the PS2 is older than the PS3, I haven't been buying up games forever. So here's a take a look at the games I've bought within the past 2 years, which I wish I had sooner. I picked up this game about 2 months back, and I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised. For you see, before I bought this game I knew nothing about it at all. All I had to go off of was the box art, so when I put this game in I had no idea what to expect. But oh man, this game is a first person shooter, and a very smooth one. You take control of a cast of characters armed with a pistol to start off with, but there are other guns located throughout the stages. You're tasked with bringing an object from one end of the map back to the start. The music is nice, and they all correspond beautifully to the level the song is playing on. But the main storyline isn't the game's main focus, I think. Rather, all the minigame scenarios are. And if you have an hour to spare, you can make up your own levels to play on. There's a variety of minigames you can play, such as Capture the Flag or Last Man Standing. The AI opponents aren't too bad either. Sometimes it can be a close match, and hey, what if you have extra controllers collecting dust? Well then, if you have one of these doohickeys, then you can have up to 4 split screen multiplayer. It might help to have some friends with you though. Sega could have just dumped ROMs onto a PS2 or Xbox disc, but instead, they chose to include a whole bunch of extras like the manuals, some of the comics, exclusive artwork, and other games, not just Sonic. Even the menus and the music are memorable. The emulation at play here is spot on. Everything is exactly as it should be, minus the control of course. I remember just spending so much time on this when I first got it. There was always something for me to do. I liked this game so much I even recreated its save icon. Cool, right? If you've ever wanted to get into the original Sonic games, you may want to consider picking this one up. Or if you want to get into the Mega Drive more broadly, the Sega Mega Drive collection on current gen consoles is a better alternative, but keep in mind, games like Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and the Ooze aren't included. Here we have Rockstar's take on a boarding school life. You play as Jimmy Hopkins, dumped here whilst his step-parents are on their honeymoon. Your mission? To rule the school and make sure everyone knows who you are, by any means necessary. At your disposal are a variety of weapons and vehicles to get around, but aside from your main mission, you still have to go to your class anyway. The controls in this game are fluid and responsive, and the graphics are perfectly acceptable for 2006 standards. And the attention to detail too. When you're skateboarding over the metal joints in the bridge, you hear it. There's also a whole city for you to explore too, and this city is big. Big enough for Rockstar to add this game to their long tradition of including poster maps with most of their games.
Hey, come on over, have some fun with Crazy Taxi!
This is one of Sega's best games at the time, taking something usually boring into something that's crazy. I think it's time I cross something else off the bucket list. This game is a faithful reproduction of the arcade, with the same music and art style. You can choose between 3 different cab drivers, but I always go with BD Joe. The main objective is to get customers from point A to point B in the fastest time possible. The faster you go, the more points you get. However, the controls just felt off to me. by the end of it I managed to figure out what to do. I would say if you're a fan of the Dreamcast era Sega games in particular, this wouldn't be a bad purchase, but if you just wanted to kill some time, you could do a lot worse. This is the most recent PS2 game I purchased, and I had to say, this has proven to be a great one. I think any Atlus game that isn't Persona takes a backseat to it, and that means many people are missing out on some great games. And having only played a couple hours of it so far, I'm really hooked. 6 enemy tribes fighting for supremacy over their land, so they eventually go up to Nirvana. And since you take control of the smallest tribe, it makes your victories against the other tribes feel more earned, like an underdog sort of thing. As our tribe battle with another, a strange object opens up, causing everyone to turn into demons, also revealing a person inside, who is able to revert the transformation. Since this is a turn-based RPG with random encounters, a comparison to Persona isn't too dissimilar, but they aren't the same. I would say, if you want to explore some of Atlus's lesser-known titles, Digital Devil Saga is a good starting point, especially how it is inexpensive, and with the content exceeding 30 hours, it will keep you busy for a while. So there you have it, a look at 10 PS2 games I feel are important. But why just 10 for a 20th anniversary video? Well, it hasn't been crossed off yet.